Good. So I'm in the Discosumo project with Sanoma, and that's on different applications that Sanoma offers on the internet, and trying to improve using natural language processing, for example, summarizing fora and these kinds of things. And natural language processing is simply teaching the computer to process language and use that for all kinds of useful applications. In this talk, I will discuss my PhD research, and that's on social media, mainly Twitter, and trying to find emotion and events there. And that comes together in Anticipointment. So that's kind of that's not an official word. It's in the Urban Dictionary, and it basically states that when the promise of a new product, movie, or technological advance doesn't live up to the hype. So Anticipointment is a bit like disappointment, right? You are mainly disappointed if you anticipate on something, but Anticipointment really stresses this long period of looking forward to something. And movies that are hyped are very suitable to the feeling of Anticipointment for people. And I think you all have experienced your bigger and smaller Anticipointment. Well, at the time when I first made this talk, you had this movie, Batman vs. Superman, ideal case of Anticipointment. It was a lot of money, hyped a lot, and the movie was very bad. So that's your classical Anticipointment, but you also find it in sports events. For a long time, Feyenoord was actually the champion of Anticipointment. Each season, the Feyenoord supporters, very loyal and faithful, they bought their season ticket for Feyenoord, and then, well, basically in half a year they knew that it wasn't going to work again this year to be the champions, but, well, past year they did manage. So then Ajax was the second good example, where they were in the finals of the Europe League and also lost that one. Well, if I look ahead in this year, in the movie calendar, for example, I think this one is a big candidate for Anticipointment, the new Jurassic World. But also in the sports, we will have Pyeongchang. The Dutch skaters basically did a very good job 4 years ago, but, well, let's see how they do this year. I think this is very positive. After this talk, you will be happy that the Netherlands are not qualified, because it will save us a lot of sorrow this summer. Okay, so that's a bit of an introduction. Also, you see Anticipointment being discussed on Twitter. So here are some examples. The feeling you get in the instant between the DJ saying, "Here's the Beatles," and Yellow Submarine starting. But also on Netflix, when you get excited about the new Netflix releases and don't find the thing you want to watch. Anton van den Bos, that's my supervisor. We were trying to brainstorm what would be a good Dutch word for Anticipointment. The best we could come up with was anticipeleurstelling. We're not so satisfied with that, so we're sticking to Anticipointment. So my research was all on trying to detect Anticipointment in the wild, and Twitter is very good for that kind of research. Now, what we were trying to do, collective Anticipointment, so these events where a lot of people look forward to it, and afterwards we see a lot of disappointment expressed on Twitter. So that's basically our task here. And we applied a data-driven approach. We didn't put in a lot of our personal knowledge. We tried to find all knowledge on Twitter, and that means that the events that we tried to measure the Anticipointment for were detected automatically, and also the emotion was detected by training a system to recognize these emotions of anticipation and disappointment. Well, why would you want to do that? First of all, it tells us something about ourselves. So you can look at this psychological question: is it good to look forward to things, or is it better to just live in the moment, don't expect a lot, and then it can only be better than your expectations? Or is there something nice to just anticipating, and most of the times it works out fine, and we have a nice events and it lives up to the expectations? So that's a question that we wanted to answer by measuring whether Anticipointment is a very common thing that we see on Twitter. But also, and that was more on a personal note, I wanted to be able to make this wall of shame. Like if you do this for all tweets that come in, you can every year you can have this top 10 most anticipating events. So we can score each event in that way. So those are two goals that we had. And the research challenge here was to explore the link between collecting pre-event and post-event emotions on Twitter, and that's not being done period in language technology yet. So what I will do in this talk, it will not be very technical. I will give a basic conceptual idea of how the applications work. And there are basically two main applications, being event detection and emotion detection. If you have any questions, just let me know afterwards or during the talk. So first of all, the detection. Well, for Anticipointment, we're focusing on social events, these events that people go to that are planned. So a very good signal there is to check tweets for references to future events. So people just mentioning a date along with the event, saying only 12 nights of sleep, and then the event is these kinds of references. And if there are events like these social events that a lot of people go to, then we can distinguish these bigger social events, such as football matches and movies, from personal events that people might also refer to, right? Like holidays and these kinds of things. So we try to link dates and entities here. The first task is then to find dates. And only based on a couple of simple rules, you can already find a lot of tweets in which people refer to a future point in time. So that's what we did. Here are some examples. This Friday, one more day, April 24th. There is some variety, but not a lot. Okay, then secondly, for finding the names of events in the tweets where we see a date mentioned, well, there's this task called named entity detection, and that means just from a sequence of words, find locations, organizations, events, and so forth. But it doesn't work very well, especially not on social media, where the context, the language surrounding it, is often quite noisy, so to say. Noisy in the sense that people make spelling errors and these kinds of things. So what we did some entity linking, looking on Wikipedia where basically all events are mentioned, and then just seeing whether the name of a Wikipedia page could be seen in a tweet, and when it was seen, is it a very common entity, and we could check that by these Wikipedia pages that are mentioned a lot in other Wikipedia pages. For example, you also have pages that are called GA, which is a common Dutch word, but it's probably an abbreviation for something. In other Wikipedia pages, probably it's being used a lot without referring to this specific page. So that's a very not entity-like page. But otherwise, if you have pages that are, if they are mentioned in a page, they are also given a link to this page, then they are probably a strong entity. So that's basically the approach that we took here. In this case, you could find Memorial Van Damme has a page name and a very common one, so we take it. Also, a very obvious signal here is just taking hashtags. A lot of events are being given a specific hashtag, and that's a very good cue. So what we did is make an application of this. This is Llama Events. Unfortunately, it's not online at the moment. We will try to revive it, but well, basically what you see is you see all the 6 days in the future and all the events that we can find with the entities. So this is the first component. And then what we do for the Anticipointment detection is detect events for like 5 years, so we can collect a lot. And then afterwards, we want to have a window before this event and after this event to measure the emotion that people have beforehand and afterwards. And then apply a classifier recognizing these emotions. So what tweets are really anticipating the event, what tweets are being disappointed. So this is the data that we've been working with. In total, we had about 3,500 events with quite some tweets. And you see here that for the pre-event, the median is 296 tweets per event, the tweets that refer to the event, but the mean is 1,169 with quite high standard deviation. So that indicates that we had a lot of events where not a lot of tweets mentioned them, and quite some very big events. But we really wanted to study them all for this top 10 of Anticipointing events. Okay, now for the second component, that's training emotion classifiers. And that's basically based on this idea. This is a Dutch tweet, but I will translate it. So this is what people do a lot. Only 2 weeks, then Zon en Maan is here for our Edinburgh trip, party, Hunters Forever, Ghosts, and then very importantly, this hashtag Zinin. And Zinin is Dutch for looking forward to it. I don't know if in English there is also this kind of common hashtag that people use when you're looking forward to something. But for us, that's very important. Here's another example. It's gonna happen. Finally, I'm gonna go to Typhoon, this rapper. And again, this hashtag. And this is a very common, it's like a convention in the community. People that post a tweet looking forward to something using this hashtag. Now, this is important because for emotion detection, we are using machine learning. And machine learning is working purely based on examples. And well, what we can do is we collect tweet and we annotate, we code the examples ourselves. We read all the tweets and see, okay, this person is anticipating, this is an anticipating tweet, and this is not. But using the hashtag, we could collect a lot of examples. Presumably, people using this hashtag are looking forward to it. And then we can train a system to model all words that surround this hashtag. So the words that people might use in the context of anticipation. That's basically the idea here. And this is how it works. You might know machine learning already, but this is a very simple schematic. So we collect all the tweets with this hashtag SYNIN that we can collect. And then to have the negative tweets, so to say, the tweets that are not anticipating, we just take random tweets. Might be some anticipating tweets in it, but not a lot. And here, the vast majority will be anticipating. So if we compare the two, we throw them both into a machine learning algorithm. Machine learning algorithm starts modeling anticipation. And what you then get is like this weighted list of words that are very much attached to people anticipating. So this is emotional loaded words, so to say. Fun, in a minute, there's also some time in it, of course. Exciting, I can't wait. Party, gezellig, I guess. Kriebels, I also can't really translate. Sorry? Thanks, good. And prepare. So this is basically what you get. This is the model that you get, and the machine can then try to see for new tweets. Here we have another tweet. Doesn't have this hashtag SYNIN. It says 5th of March. I'm there, the Mega Pirate Festival in Nijmegen. I'm really looking forward to it. Not this hashtag SYNIN, but the machine that is modeled that way will recognize, okay, this is typically a tweet that is looking forward to it. So that's how it works. Here's another example. It's fun. I also looking forward to it, but not in the hashtag. Animal Day on a farm. Great. Okay. Well, everyone their hobbies. Okay. So this is again in numbers what we did. So we wanted to recognize this anticipation type of tweet, positive expectation. We also looked at disappointment for the tweets after events, and also satisfaction for the tweets after the event. We didn't only use the hashtag SYNIN, but also ready for it, and a lot of Hilfel SYNIN, so I'm looking forward to it a lot. Very excited. And then these are nice numbers for machine learning here. This is something that we can work with. A big volume is good for your model. It will be more balanced. So in the end, we had our systems trained on this, and of course, with the negative tweets in the same numbers. So that's what we've been working with. And on our events that I just showed, so the 3,500 events, 3-day window, 3 days before, 3 days after, we just applied these classifiers. So before we had our excited classifiers, and the green part of the bar is the number of tweets that our system, our classifier set were expressing excitement. And then afterwards, we did the same for the disappointment and the satisfaction. Satisfaction is blue here, is kind of the majority, disappointment is red, and this is interesting, right? The purple part of the bar is these tweets, where both our classifier for disappointment said this is a disappointing tweet, and our classifier that was measuring excitement also said it was probably excitement tweet. And that can happen. There are a couple of reasons. Systems make mistakes. Systems are not as good as humans in recognizing emotion, even though we have a lot of examples. They're not perfect. They don't know the world knowledge, the context surrounding things. And also both classifiers, like for anticipation, which had some temporal markers of forward referring words, probably these two classifiers had backward referring words. And that's probably what the classifier sketched up on. So our set is not perfect, but we were working with it. And then this is what you can plot. So on the x-axis, we have excitement. On the y-axis, we have disappointment. And all the dots on this plot are an event. So this event, and this is where we put all tweets that we could find for the event together. So the scores of the classifier, is it excitement or not? This events, we could find 70% excitement in the tweets, but 0% disappointment. So this is like the perfect event. For Anticipointment, we have to be around here. So if you look in this side, that's what we can call meh. That's the events where not a lot happens. There's not a lot of emotion beforehand, also not a lot afterwards, not a big contrast. Sorry? Yeah, exactly, probably. This is where we wanted to be. The Anticipointment part, where there's a lot of excitement and there's a lot of disappointment. But so you can see in the scatter plot, at first you see that it goes all the like basically it's scattered. It's a real scatter plot because it's scattered all over the place. And we wanted to have a bigger density here. So basically this plot shows us that, well, in our automatic approach, we couldn't find these classical Anticipointment events a lot, unfortunately. Well, we had the other emotion as well, that's satisfaction. And you can see that this is basically a better, somewhat more smoother pattern. So you see here that the more people are anticipating the event, the chance for satisfaction is also higher, which is definitely not the case with disappointment. So again, this is fulfilled expectations is somewhat more filled than the other one. So that basically our hypothesis that Anticipointment is common and too common, that's not true here. Okay, this is the second. So for this is more the psychological part, and we can conclude it's okay to look forward because probably you will get excited and positivity all around. But we also wanted to look on the event level. So which events are really prone to this Anticipointment? Yeah, and what we see then, so this is the formula, but we take into account the amount of satisfaction and disappointment after events and the amount of anticipation. If we bring that together, then we get a score. And these are the 5 most anticipating events in our set. And 4 of these 5 are actually sports matches, football matches. So that's this, what you see, NEDDEN, that's Netherlands against Denmark. And that's a match at the European Championships, 2012, first match. And well, actually 2 years before they were in the final, so people were expecting a lot, and the match was lost against Denmark. So that's a very classical case. Also the other, Net Duo, the Netherlands against Germany, that's World Cup. And then we have some Dutch Football League matches, so a lot of sports. And that's probably not a big surprise, because there are always winners and losers in sports. While when you watch a movie, people might think, it was not that good, but I had a nice chair. So people were not as expressive after these kinds of events like movies than with sports matches. There's one odd one out here, that's the Concert at Sea festival. Well, the reason that this one was very high on the Anticipointment scale is that it got cancelled. So that's a very clear loss, and that's when you see that very clearly in the tweets. Otherwise, it's more a grayish area rather than black and white. We also looked at the anticipated satisfaction, and what you see there is more like commercial events where people are actually being paid to tweet about this event and being positive. Like I was at this HD6, well, not so much commercial, it's the charity event against cancer. So the Alpe d'Huez, if people know it. And there's a lot of positivity there, both before and after. So that's the kind of events that you see there. And then finally, if you want to see the events with a lot of emotion period, then we get into the Pinkpop Festival, which is like, so we have a couple of big festivals in the Netherlands, but Pinkpop always has the bigger headlines. And also we see a lot of emotion. People watching television and reporting on it, having their opinion. So how are we in time? Oh yeah. Okay, so about 5 minutes maybe. 10 minutes. Okay, good. Then another analysis. So we have our outcome here, and we have found some patterns in the data, but we also wanted to sort of validate whether our systems behave as we expected. So what we did then, it was after these World Championships in Brazil, 2014. We just took all the matches played by the Netherlands and tried to see what our systems did. And then if you look at the first match, the blue line, that's your positive expectation, orange is disappointment, and grayish is satisfaction. And you see that the anticipation and disappointment are kind of high, but satisfaction is really sky high, and that could be due to the very good score and also the first match of the World Championships. So people were also really anticipating it. But then this also a bit of indicates the noise in the data, because we did see a lot of disappointment. I checked it. Why is the disappointment high? They won 5-1. And what you see is that people are disappointed in personal stuff. So they're watching the match in this cafe somewhere, and someone is being rude to them, disappointment, and so on. And that can really mess up. So that's also something that we learned. You can collect tweets. You can see that the tweet refers to the event, but it doesn't have to actually report on the event or report their disappointment about the event. Okay, then we get some, so this is still in the round 1 phase with 4 teams. Again, we have to watch the match against Australia. Bit less emotion there, and you see against Chile, that's what you would expect, because they were already passing on to the next round, and there was not a lot at stake. So then the emotions are quite low. Then for Mexico, again, very high satisfaction, probably due to the last minute escape from the Netherlands. Against Costa Rica, it's a bit less, because it was kind of narrow as well, winning in the penalties. And then again in the semifinals against Argentina, the disappointment is highest. They lost, so that's also what you would expect. And then against Brazil, the emotions are a bit less, but satisfaction was good because they played well. So this is kind of a validation of our approach, and it behaved as expected in the bigger scheme of things, but also tweets are a bit unreliable in that respect. Okay, so our observations here, positive expectation and satisfaction rather than disappointment are very strongly linked. So a thing like Anticipointment, we did find it, but it was definitely not a very common thing. And also what we saw is that if we see Anticipointment, then it's mostly related to sports matches where there's a clear loss. And well, this Batman versus Superman prototype anticipating event, I'm still very much sure that people were anticipated. But in Twitter, we didn't see a very clear pattern as we did for the sports matches. Well, this can be explained in a couple of ways. First is the Pollyanna hypothesis. This hypothesis states that positivity is default. People are probably more inclined to tweet positively about things on Twitter. They want to expose a positive life of themselves, and disappointment is not part of that. And also, if you look at cognitive dissonance, so that you make your choices and so on cognitively correct, could also be at play. So someone who is very excited beforehand and tweets maybe multiple times like, oh, this event, this will be awesome. And then it's not, if they might not be inclined to tweet about disappointment, because that would kind of be against their expectations, and maybe they would have face loss there. It's a possibility. So maybe disappointment stated explicitly is one thing, but we could also look at, well, people not tweeting at all. That might also be a cue here. Well, also, we're looking into emotions which are kind of primary. And then when you're feeling disappointment, you really feel it in your bones. But tweeting about it, there's some time between it. And people use words for it, stating their disappointment, but it doesn't actually have to be very much in line with their emotion, which is strongly felt. And then finally, we had this problem also. It's like a summarization problem. You have a aggregated set of tweets, and you want to define, okay, are these people collectively disappointed? which is hard. We had our classifier scores, and it was kind of a problem to bring it well together. Okay, to end, we had some tweets on the personal level. To answer this question, is it good to be excited? These tweets are really heartbreaking sometimes. So I'm celebrating 3 times Christmas, woohoo! And that was posted the 24th of December, so that's Christmas Eve. And then 2 days later, well, the disappointment not in the event itself, but that it was over so quickly. Yeah. So you're anticipating it for half a year and then it's over. Here's one going to Groningen, Eurosonic Noorderslag. I'm already on the way and using the hashtag. And then afterwards, I don't know if you guys know Groningen, but this person says, oh no, I ended up in the Blauwe Engel again. Anyone knows this place? That's like the underground pub that you get lost in at 5 o'clock in the morning. And that kind of a disappointment for this person. And finally, yeah, Feyenoord is champion now, but this is what I saw a lot. Finally, I'm going to watch Feyenoord again, and then Feyenoord ruins your weekend again. So that's what I want to end with. And thanks. Any questions?
No questions. Where's your Twitter?
Sorry?
Where's your Twitter?
Oh yeah, I have a Twitter. It's F Kunneman, but I'm not active enough to no.
Can you mention some? This is all very theoretical, but can you mention some practical uses?
Yeah, so the practical usage, I want to display that on this website that I have shown. Yeah, but for companies, I think you can really check which events are popular beforehand rather than when they happen, so that you can see this signal on Twitter. And also for the disappointment, what I was thinking for if Anticipointment was really prominent, then we could also use it to slam the companies with, like send them a message like, okay, you're not doing very well, maybe next time pitch your event in a different way. That's what I can think of. If you have other ideas, then. Ah, yeah.
With the dollar sign and the currency symbol,
Uh-huh.
you can see the trends before they happen.
Indeed. So that's not so much the disappointment afterwards. Well, you can do that constantly, basically.
Up or down.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. I will consider this. No other questions?